4:33 p.m. today, Paul. Eastern time.
4:33.
Exactly. Weather permitting.
Weather permitting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Is what?
Florida.
Florida's going to finally sink into the ocean and...
Kennedy.
I see. Oh, there's a launch. Is it a SpaceX launch?
It is,
NASA.
with humans on top of it.
With humans.
Well, technically inside of it.
Hopefully they'll be using the Tesla auto drive feature, am I right? Anybody?
Well, this is SpaceX. This is the adult version. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to this. We'll see if it happens. The weather's not great. I think it's like a 50% chance or whatever, but they'll be launching.
What are they doing exactly? Just going to put something in orbit and make it come
No,
on?
I think they're going to the space station.
Yikes. Wow. That's okay. So this is something they obviously have tested unmanned several times. And then
many. Yeah. The certification process, I believe, started back in 2011.
Wow. So. Wow. This is a part of our government that actually gives a crap about stuff. Well, that's good.
It is NASA. I do like NASA. So.
Oh, no, of course. Everyone loves NASA.
I mean, they gave us what's the ice cream that they gave us? The little frozen
ice cream, astronaut ice cream.
There's dry.
Tang kind of came out of this too, although Tang kind of came and went, I guess.
And apparently, memory foam. If all the commercials have led me to believe anything about those mattresses.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, anyway,
that's good. Okay, I'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah. So, 4:33 p.m. We'll look and see what happens today. Because now it is. I legitimately forgot that yesterday was Tuesday, because we had that fake Monday, which was really a fake Sunday. But
I know.
Anyways, what quarter are we in? We're in Q2, right?
We are still in Q2 as of, I think, Monday or Tuesday. We'll be in Q3.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you my contractually obligated 1 compliment per quarter.
Oh,
because we are now in Q2.
What have I done?
I read your post. We fought the web, and the web won. Quite good.
Yeah. Wow. Let me tell you
good.
2 things about this post, because the first is I should have linked to the articles I wrote previously about some of the topics that I discussed. Mm-hmm. Some of them I've not yet discussed in this programming Windows series because they take place after the .NET thing. So that was laziness on my part, but.
Are you writing like a Star Wars trilogy here? Is that how this is?
Well, I have a programming Windows series that I wrote mostly late summer and fall, and then the .NET part of it, which is the second half, got sidetracked because I just didn't have as much personal experience with all that stuff, and that isn't the entire reason, but it's part of the reason I started writing those apps, so I could acquaint myself with these frameworks and environments to a degree that I just didn't do at the time. You know, WinForms, WPF, et cetera. So, it's, I don't mean to suggest it was purely research on my part, but I mean, it was definitely part of it. I just wanted to be able to write intelligently about it. But the second thing is, and this really weighed on me, I started writing this several days ago, and I was really nervous about it coming off as negative. Really nervous. And I don't usually worry about this. I don't mean to say I'm getting sensitive all of a sudden, but I mean, I will say, like, consider like a legit concern. Like, I just wrote something very positive about Project Reunion, and I knew, and I said I felt that people were going to come back and say, "But Paul, you just said that Project Reunion was great, but now you're saying they should never make anything like this," and those are true. I mean. Those 2 things are both true. They're not completely contrary because, I mean, I feel like they should have done Project Reunion 8 years ago or whatever, 5 years ago. Sure. But they do. I think it's important to get that stuff right as they can, given what they've done. Yeah. And that does address that. But, when I think about this stuff, it's like, this just isn't the future. Like, who would ever today, like, you wake up this morning as a dev and you're like, oh my God, I've got this incredible app idea. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to only put it on Windows, and I'm going to use, any of those things, C++, WinForms, Project Reunion, whatever. I mean, like, that's nonsense. Like, who would ever do that? That's crazy. Like, the real value of Project Reunion, I think, is to existing apps.
Yep. I
for
would agree.
developers who want to modernize. So, the other thing, and not to get off on a complete tangent, but I'm just going to milk the compliment because I really appreciate this, is I haven't written about this part yet, but I've spent a considerable amount of time in Xamarin Forums recently, and I've started writing an app that is not a notepad app. Mm-hmm. It's actually a cocktail app, and this is incredibly complex because you need a database that stores things. You need a way to write to, like a forum for people to add or edit recipes. At some point, you have to figure out a way to replicate this it's got to go out to OneDrive or something, or where you can get to it from multiple, if you have a different phone or something. And there's a lot that goes into it. But I will eventually write about some of the stuff I've done and seen with Xamarin Forms. It's kind of interesting, but and I have to say it's really exciting to see an app come up on a phone, and to figure stuff out there. There is this thing coming down the pike called .NET MAUI, which is like the future of Xamarin Forms, and it's going to support Windows and Mac and Android and iOS. And that's interesting, right? Like that's the cross-platform thing. It's not built on open standards, but I mean it's .NET, well, it'll be .NET 6 based, but that's interesting. And of course, there's like the Blazor stuff, like Blazor WebAssembly, which allows you to write a web app, including a PWA, in C#, and it targets web standards, and so it works on the open web on any browser, any web server, whatever. That's of interest. So I don't know. I didn't. It's funny. I really worried about it, and I was kind of surprised. Like most people were like, "Yeah, this is pretty good,"
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Maybe it's because most people can't get into the site right now, or So I don't know what's going on. But yeah. Anyway, so that's thank you. Anyway. Yeah.
Here's another interesting little thought nugget, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Been thinking about this one for a couple of days. So if you went back, whatever, like 4 or 5 years ago, is Microsoft should buy Slack. That was like the big thing. Like it's a productivity tool. It's all that stuff.
Yep.
Now we jump forward to today, and Google, Facebook, basically every large company, including Microsoft, is now under scrutiny for acquisitions that they've made effectively since 2010.
Right.
If they would have bought Slack, I bet that would have opened them up potentially to antitrust investigation. I really do. Because they saw a competitor in the market.
No, that's you're right. Yeah, that's an interesting
snatched
thing.
them up to get rid of them.
You probably saw the thing this week that I think it was the CEO of Slack complained that Microsoft was like overly preoccupied with killing Slack. I find that to be preposterous because probably internally they are. By the way, that's the job of a corporation.
Yes.
So, that's called doing the right thing for your shareholders. I mean, it makes it sound like they're like a defenseless baby deer, getting attacked by a mountain lion or something.
It's pretty graphic, but yes.
Yeah, sorry. I would say the opposite is true. From at least from a public stance, Slack cannot stop talking about Teams and keep saying stuff like, they're like the Baghdad Bob of software now. It's like they're not even a competitor. I don't know why they talk about us so much. I mean, here's what I'll say. And you and I think have had this conversation about Teams maybe improving too much, taking on too many features and so forth. Teams is a platform. It's a big thing. It's complex. And Slack is this kind of typical mobile app where it kind of does one thing and it does one thing probably pretty well. I've never used Slack. I don't care. But there will always be a place in the world for both of those kinds of solutions.
Yep.
That Microsoft has turned to a top-heavy, not monolithic. It's more like a tentacles of functionality kind of solution is so Microsoft. They can't let any good idea die. It's like, oh my God, this is popular. Keep adding stuff to it. It's very Microsoft. And so Slack should rest easy. In the same way that there are, like a small company will come up today, a couple of guys, you and I are like, oh, we want to start a company. They're going to run that company on G Suite. They're going to use things like Slack. They're not going to go buy Microsoft 365. They just aren't. And that world it's going to coexist,
Yeah.
I don't know. I had an interesting exchange with Tony Redmond on Twitter yesterday about this. And Tony, like me, is a kind of an old school guy, is surprisingly okay with Microsoft's approach, but I think, he came up in the world. He was like an Outlook guy. Of course, he would see Teams as something very familiar. Teams is the next Outlook. It's has the same benefits and suffers from the same problems,
Maybe in the minority. I would actually love it if there's a little button in there that just said email. Then I just wouldn't happen to open mail. But
yeah, right. That's exactly right. And interestingly, and you've seen, anyone can see this for themselves. The mail and calendar app that are built into Windows 10 are technically a mobile new app, but a mobile version of Outlook, and they are one app. And those two apps, it's basically two views into the same back end. So mail is one view and calendar is the other view, but they're the same. It's the same app doing those things. It's kind of interesting, and you can see it when you update it because it says mail and calendar. And Outlook is mail and calendar and 3 million other things. I don't know, but anyway, yeah. But whatever it is, that's Microsoft's way.
Yep. Yeah, and they're only going to be adding more to it because at Build they announced easier way to build apps and improve the licensing of using apps inside a team. So it's only growing up.
Yeah, and we recorded a podcast recently with Microsoft that will go live this week, I assume. But part of that conversation was this notion of people living in teams, which is what we used to describe. People work, just spending their day in Outlook. Outlook was their day,
Yep.
So I don't know. We've had our struggles with Teams. I mean, this is something we need to you and I and the company we work for. I mean, it's not that simple does one thing application, So you kind of have to work through it and figure out what works and what doesn't for you. And
yep.
Yeah, we do that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's external parties continue to be a challenge. Or interacting with external parties continues to be a challenge, and there's it's better than it was, but it's still far from perfect, and it's definitely not Zoom easy. So
yeah. Well, Microsoft does care about privacy and security, so I'm sure that's part of it. But guest access to Teams happened a long time ago, but that was a big concern at first, and now we're waiting on Teams Skype integration. And I think the technical problems might be different, but the problem at a high level is the same. Integrating two different platforms is difficult, and whatever. They'll get there.
That they will, and we will get back here probably tomorrow, right?
Yeah. The only good thing about this week is it's going to be a short week.
In theory.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's supposed to be.